you and I spoke a couple weeks ago, and I've been listening into your Shift Network course, and it's been very helpful because anytime that I find myself either in fear, anxiety, or feeling, scary symptoms, oh my God, there's something wrong with my body, I just like, that's Wetiko. And just by realizing that, the light bulb goes off, I see the silence, there's nothing wrong. And that right there, to
Yeah.
me, is a very healing moment. So by
Right.
recognizing that Wetiko even exists, that is a healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's another example. Say somebody on the political stage, a president, a prime minister, whoever, and say if people are really freaked out by this person and they're like, oh, he's, possessed by Wetiko. Yeah, any person, just like an archetype, we can be possessed by an archetype of the collective unconscious, and then we literally embody that archetype. But if we think, oh, that person has Wetiko and I don't, well, guess what? Wetiko feeds off of separation. And as soon as there's separation, there's fear. So the idea is that, oh, wait a second, if that president or whoever is embodying Wetiko, and if we actually have the recognition of the dreamlike nature, which is to say, well, he's just a dream character, he's just reflecting that part of me, then all of a sudden you've dispelled that sense of separation. And the manifestation of Wetiko in your waking dream through that person, instead of creating fear and separation, has increased your awareness and made you realize the dreamlike nature, And if you remember what I was saying, the way to see through Wetiko is to see the dreamlike nature and to see through the imagination that we exist as separate selves, Now, here's another thing that I think would be so helpful for people to really hear. So I began going through my own process. We're all in a process of awakening. And for me, it happened a number of years ago in 1981. And I was a young kid in my mid 20s. And all of a sudden, I realized after a while, oh my God, I've gotten enlisted in a shamanic initiatory process. Now, I didn't know a thing about shamanism at that point, but I've since not only studied it, but it's been a 24/7 process that I've had to navigate. And so I wanted to say a little bit about the shamanic aspect of the healing, because we're all shamans in training. Okay. And a shaman, no one in a million years would ever consciously decide to be a shaman. You'd have to be out of your mind because the suffering is so overwhelming, and it could drive you totally insane. And but you become a potential on the shamanic path when you get called. In other words, when the spirits call you, and then if you don't assent and cooperate with the calling, that's when you get sick. But if you're being called to be a shaman, it's important to, okay, I'm going to follow this and honor my calling and assent to this. And invariably, it involves a descent into the underworld, into the unconscious, into the darkness, confronting evil, death, insanity, all those things. And just trust me, I'm talking from my own experience. And I'm no shaman. I joke with people, only in my wildest dreams am I a shaman, but I'm a shaman in training, like we all are. And my teachers, I mean, they're the shamans. And the idea is that we're all shamans in training. And we've all been made sick by the collective psychosis of Wetiko. And it's getting channeled through us. Oh, this person has a skin rash. This person has migraines. This person's depressed. Whatever, like you were saying, the Play-Doh. I just love that, going through the star thing, but the point is that, you see, when we have symptoms like that, it's really easy to personalize the symptom and to pathologize ourselves. But actually, when we recognize, wait a second, I'm just a cell in a greater body, and this is a shamanic initiatory process, and what I'm suffering from is an iteration of the deeper fractal of the illness that's in the larger collective, then all of a sudden, by having that, context, that reframe, you all of a sudden step out of pathologizing or judging or contracting against your experience, and you begin to embrace it, to create the space for it to transmute. And that's when your own shamanic initiatory process deepens, and you put on your shamanic garment and connect with your own shamanic body, and actually bring yourself back to health. And by doing that non-locally, Not only is it helping the client if you're a shaman working with someone, but it helps the whole universe non-locally. And that, what I just described, that's each and every one of our processes. And it's really helpful to, to have the recognition of that.
To be called into the dismemberment process, it can be very painful. And part of that can even be, well, again, going back to what you said earlier about leaders, and I don't want to get political, obviously, but some people have been drawn into this collective madness where they don't believe anything except what this I don't know, this sort of bent group has been broadcasting forward. And it feels like Wetiko has sort of gotten hold of something in them. I assume you know where I'm going
No,
with
I
this.
totally know, absolutely. And I mean, that's part of the collective psychosis where people's, we all have discernment or not. Some people's discernment gets disabled if they drink the Kool-Aid in a certain way. And you see, one of the main qualities of our species is that we're open to having suggestions, of other people's ideas of what's true. If we don't have our discernment, we'll take on their suggestions, without self-reflecting. And you see, one of the ways the collective psychosis works is that when people, so say if somebody is out of balance and is, infected by Wetiko and is, sort of disoriented and has a particular madness, if they meet somebody who's holding up a mirror and reflecting back their madness, they're going to see that person as insane. But if another person comes and says, "Oh, I agree with you," so they're also mad in the same way, they see that person as like, "Oh, that's my ally, that's my friend." And so then basically what happens is that they tend to attract people who see, the same sort of crazy viewpoint that they do, and they all reinforce each other's distortion. And it literally creates an impenetrable bubble where anybody from the outside who's trying to reflect back, that they're out of balance or they're not seeing correctly or they're projecting or that they're mad, instead of getting self-reflectively considered, that then becomes more evidence of, oh, they're just crazy. And all of us, the members of our club, we're the patriots and we're the ones who are in touch, who possess the truth and reality. And by doing that, you see, I want to point out, Wetiko is an inner disease of the soul. Remember that I said it actually somehow is able to extend itself out in the world and express the psyche of someone under its thrall, express it through the medium of the outside world. Just consider that group that's gone collectively mad and is reinforcing their own madness. They're totally entrenched in an us versus a them paradigm. They're polarizing and saying, "Oh, the other people are mad. The other people, they're the evil ones. They're the ones who aren't patriots." So their inner state of disassociation, their inner state of polarization is actually getting dreamed up and played out in the outside world. That's an example of what I mean, that Wetiko is an inner disease of the soul that actually, really somehow in a magical way, synchronistically, is able to reflect back the state of a psyche that's under its thrall. And just one final thing, when you talk about no person in their right mind ever would like, "Oh, I'm going to voluntarily become a shaman." I mean, they just have no idea what they're in for. And yeah, you have to go through this dismemberment, a death rebirth, but the healing of that involves remembering, putting all of the disassociated parts. It's a shamanic soul retrieval where we regather all the parts of ourselves that we projected out, that we've disassociated from, and we remember. And the thing we actually remember, it's not something in a sense temporal. Like, yeah, you might have a memory of, "Oh, when I was a child, this happened and there was that trauma." Okay, but I'm talking about remembering something atemporal, something outside of time, something of eternity. And that has to do with you actually remember who you are. Because in a sense, Wetiko, before I actually found the word Wetiko, I was writing about it. I called it malignant egophrenia, ME disease, me disease. It's a misidentification of who we think we are. we then, here were these unbelievably creative, godlike beings who are also human beings, co-joined. And yet we think with these like small, limited, beings, that's the me disease. And then we think, oh, I'm separate from you. That's the me disease. That's Wetiko. But actually, when you actually like remember who you are, which is that we're interconnected, we're interdependent. That's the higher self, that's the greater personality. There are a zillion names for it, and that's an expression. When there's something that has a miracle quality, there's typically like millions of names trying to point at it. And so that's what, and the thing is that Wetiko, it's helping us to remember, it's helping us to recognize the dreamlike nature. It's helping us to like connect with that higher self. So that's why it's literally being called the greatest catalyst for human evolution that there's ever been. But the point is that if we don't recognize that, then we are fated to continue to destroy ourselves. That's why it's the most important thing. Everything else pales because there's not going to be a human species if we don't come to terms with whatever we call it, Wetiko or the counterfeiting spirit or whatever. It's in every spiritual tradition. And I'm just a translator. I'm just somebody who's pointing at the vampire and saying, look, this is dangerous. And yet it actually can help us